even like journaling around how you want to show up as a father, how you want your children to remember you. I think that just asking those internal questions and reflective questions consistently, along with all the other tools, I think can be helpful for dads to show up better for themselves and their families.
I'm really excited to have you on.
Likewise.
Today we have Jean Messeroux, LMSW,
Yes.
New York licensed psychotherapist, mental health educator, and creative entrepreneur. Well, yeah, I'm curious what kind of led you down this path? What about mental health spurred a call to action for you strong enough to pursue a career in it?
I can start from, I'll take it back to teaching because it really started there. Actually, I'll take it back to college. So when I was an undergrad, my first experience with a therapist was senior year. I only went because they offered like 3 free sessions to students, and getting ready to graduate, I was like, why not? But it was helpful. It gave me a lot of insight on myself, and even like I spoke about my dad a little bit, and so I got more insight into, you know, some of the possible mental health challenges that he was going through, and it resonated with me, but I wasn't in the space of pursuing it as a career. But funny enough, even as a kid, I always joked about like potentially being a psychologist, because I was always the guy that like my friends would tell all their challenges to, or even like some of their secrets to, because I was always just a listener. And so I think mental health is always, there were different seeds planted at different times. But I just wasn't consciously moving in that direction. So fast forward, I became a high school teacher. Within my first 2 years of teaching, they always say the first 2 years are like the hardest. And this was absolutely true. So I was an English teacher and special education. And I taught in Newark, New Jersey, high school level. And it was tough, man. And honestly, it wasn't the student. The students were okay. Typical behaviors that you would see in any school. It was mostly like the school system and the politics and the administration that made it hard to do my job, essentially. And, you know, just getting over the hurdles of learning like classroom management, lesson planning, grading, everything that goes into teaching. That's why, like, I always, being a teacher gave me a heightened respect for teachers, the teachers that I grew up with or grew up learning from. Because I'm like, yeah, this job is no joke, and you're usually underpaid in most schools. But anyway, so I had the first couple of years of teaching was pretty rough. You know, I was in a new city. I'm originally from Massachusetts, so completely new city. Didn't know anybody except for the people I worked with. Luckily enough, I was able to develop friendships with a couple of folks I worked with. But just being like isolated and going through the challenges at my job, and then I also dealt with like multiple experiences with police harassment at the time. So this was around like 2015, 16. And so in Newark, there was a assigned gang unit that essentially they were created to disband and like incarcerate gang members. But a lot of their approaches were based in profiling. And so I was profiled a lot, pulled over a lot. You know, I had an experience where, excuse me, I was pulled over, like illegally searched, like guns were drawn, like just really traumatic experience, and multiple experiences that were like similar. And so dealing with all these different factors at the time was really heavy on me. And I didn't really know how to navigate it. I kind of just, you know, suppressed it as most of us do, continued with the work that I was doing. But I didn't really know, I wasn't aware of like mental health services and how to really help myself in like healthy ways. And so at the time, like, I leaned into like substances, smoking weed, drinking, not to the level of addiction, but just more than I would say is healthy. So anyways, fast forward during that time, I've always been a reader. So mental health was something that, I remembered my experience with therapy or that one time I went to a therapist, and I decided to like just get on Google and learn more about mental health and what therapy could look like. One of the barriers I faced too was finding therapists who looked like me, who I felt I could relate to. But I think what really signaled or really started the transition for me career-wise was I read a book called Standing in the Shadows by John Head. And so it's a book about depression in Black men. And it basically outlines everything I was going through or everything that I had experienced. It spoke to that in some way, shape, or form, from the police harassment issue, from work stress, from relationship challenges, challenges with parents, not having resources or education on mental health. It really just touched on everything. And so one of the factors that it highlighted was that there was a significant lack of Black male mental health professionals. And it highlighted that as a reason why a lot of Black men don't go to therapy. And so that spoke to me significantly. And I think that planted the largest seed for my inspiration to go back to school. One part I left out, I would also couple that with, in my teaching role, I structured a lot of my classes in discussion style, like seminar style. And I found that a lot of students would share a lot of their personal experiences with me, whether in class or like after school, and or in their writing, because I was an English teacher. And so I was learning a lot about my students, and just that, again, that seed of being the person that people would share a lot of their experiences with kept popping up again. And so that, coupled with my personal experiences and the research and the reading, led me to making the decision to returning to school and, doing the work that I do now.
I appreciate you sharing.
It's kind of long-winded, but
no, there's so much in there. It's teachers take on such a broad role, so much beyond just transfer of knowledge.
Yeah, 100%.
The therapist role, the hearing and listening problems, but then also boundaries and managing classroom, being a role model, but also disciplinarian. It's such a push and pull, especially dealing with like young minds, very diverse student body, where they're at. They're bringing their own stuff from home, friends. So it's such a challenge.
100%.
And then it makes perfect sense. And you kept bringing up the sharing of secrets. And we recently had Dr. Niobe Way on the podcast, who wrote Deep Secrets, the secrets boys tell each other. And it's such an important part of like intimate friendships and relationships between boys and men.
Right.
So it makes sense with your role as a connector that was such a common theme. And then also you mentioned the lack of representation for Black male therapists, and is such an important aspect for successful, productive therapy, to find a therapist that you can relate to, or else your stories, feelings can ring hollow against someone who doesn't understand.
I agree. And I not to interrupt your
no, I was just processing, summarizing what you shared.
Got you. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight a couple words that you said was successful and productive therapy. And I think it's important because in different spaces, I've heard folks, even myself actually, comment on the lack of effectiveness in therapy. And, just even comments like, therapists are just there for you to vent and list your problems. Or I remember there was a comment on Instagram actually under a post that was saying that therapy was like a waste of time because you're just revisiting your traumas, but it doesn't really help you to make progress beyond that, which can be true depending on the therapist that you work with and like your experience. But I just wanted to highlight that because I think that's something that is kind of overlooked, the productivity or the success or progress that you can see from therapy.
Yeah, it's not a silver bullet. Like, it takes work from the participant, from the therapist, and the match in the relationship has to also be there.
Right.
So getting deeper into your work, let's dive into some of like the main themes that you work on.
Sure.
I know fatherhood is one of them, and I'm sure your understanding of like the high school age informs that work. So, and being a father yourself. So I'm curious on that realm specifically. Like, what are some of the main challenges fathers are facing and some of the strategies that they can employ to improve how they feel in their position as a father?
That's good. A lot of challenges come with parenting, and specifically fatherhood. My mind goes in a lot of places when you ask that question because, obviously it's situational, but I would say the most that I come across and hear about are relationship challenges. So the relationship between fathers and their wives, girlfriends, children's mothers, maintaining those relationships and if they're co-parenting, just having a healthy co-parenting dynamic. Also, just the pressure of responsibility, because it's demanding. If you're a father who's present and active, balancing showing up for your child or children, balancing work, relationships, taking care of yourself, your friendships, etc. For me, my biggest challenges were more so in the responsibility factor, and in balancing everything. So even now, that's something I still struggle with, because, at the top of my list is always like work and family. But sometimes my friendships can be neglected, or even myself. Like the other day I had a conversation with my lady about returning to things that I like to do, because she's like, all you do is work and come home and, interact, of course, but like, you don't do anything for yourself. And so just remembering that as well. I think all parents, like, you really have to make yourself more of a priority. You have to get more selfish, and it sounds kind of paradoxical, but it's necessary if you want to be a good parent. Because if you're drained, or if your cup is empty, you're not going to be able to show up for your family the way that you want to or need to. And just for longevity, you have to take care of yourself a lot more, especially when you have a new child, because your sleep schedule is disrupted. You're adjusting to, a new presence in your home and everything. So it can be a lot. I think some tools that can be helpful for fathers are definitely the fundamental mindfulness practices. So like meditation, prayer. Something that I've been practicing for the last month is getting up significantly earlier than usual. So now I get up at 4:30, and it helps me to, because my son usually gets up around like 6:30. And so getting up earlier just helps me to have time for myself. I can work out, I can read, I can meditate. Because when I was getting up around the time that he gets up, it's just, you don't really have time for it. You're just getting up and going. And so creating more time for yourself, creating more space for yourself, whatever the routines are that help you to return to yourself, even if it's like just solo time, taking yourself out to eat, doing a class that, or trying something new that you may not have engaged in before. Journaling is really helpful. Asking questions around, and this is something that I share, or some of these techniques I share on the Hueman Fathers page, but even like journaling around how you want to show up as a father and how you want your children to remember you. I think that just asking those internal questions and reflective questions consistently, along with all the other tools, I think can be helpful for dads to show up better for themselves and their families. Last thing I would add too is community. Community is definitely huge. And I was actually having a conversation with a dad yesterday that I was interviewing for Hueman Fathers. And we were talking about how millennials have definitely set the tone for dad groups and community support. You know, you have like a lot of dad groups that are showing up. You have like the Brooklyn Stroke Club, the Dad Gang. There's like a dad, or I think it's called like Daddy Stroller Club, that they go to like different cities and do these walks with dads. So there's a lot of resources for dads that I think was unprecedented before our generation. And a lot of it has to do with, dads, this conversation, just not, or struggling with how they're showing up, how they're taking care of themselves. Maybe they didn't like how their dads or their parents showed up. So they're trying to, change that pattern. But community helps a lot, because I connect with different dad groups, and it's just reassuring to hear someone else's story, how they navigate, what helped them. So yeah, leading into community has been major for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one, to see other models of fatherhood played out in a bunch of different contexts.
Yeah,
it can be helpful to see both like problems mirrored, strategies employed,
right,
and like it helps deconstruct, because if you have a monolithic image of fatherhood in your head, that can be even more pressure to
100%.
strive for like what you think that's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then seeing it in a bunch of different varied contexts,
right,
I think humanizes it. Like you're a human father trying to do your
Literally.
best with this scenario that you have.
Yeah.
And while at the same time, like feeding all the other components of yourself.
100%. You spoke about the episode I watched, the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
You guys spoke about the male loneliness epidemic, and that can hit a lot harder when you're a dad and don't have anyone that you can lean on. So, just that emphasis on community and building with, like-minded individuals is super important once you become a dad.
Yeah. And then the other, I'm tying it back to Dr. Wei again. She discussed social health as kind of a extra component to mental health. And it really strengthens all aspects of health outcomes when you have a community to rely on, strong, connected friendships as a support system, which influences and reinforces work you do for yourself, like therapy or meditation. Like that's very individual work, but it's such an important part of staying alive and being healthy.
Yeah, no man is an island.
Yeah,
100%.
And I think with the extra work that comes with raising a family, I think friendships are often, like connected friendships are often the first thing off the table.
Yeah, that's true. And it's interesting because I started Hueman Fathers in 2017. Wasn't a dad. I just was curious about like what fatherhood was like. And I wanted to document it. And that was like a one-off project. I did it for like the month of June, and then kind of scrapped it. And I was inspired or re-inspired to continue the project when I found out I was having a child, because I was in that space of like, oh shit, and I'm like, I don't know if we can curse on here, but I was like, I was in the space of like, wow, like I don't know what to do and how to navigate this new challenge, and all I could do is really just call like my friends that I knew who had kids. And then, I'm kind of interviewing them informally. I'm like, all right, I did this project a while ago. Let me, tap back into that and really get a full perspective on how to navigate fatherhood.
Has it, jumping back into like your mental health work as a therapist, how has it informed that work? And then where do you have to like keep your own stuff separate in working with people working on their own mental health, their own lives? Like, are you sharing anecdotes about your life? Like, I do this, I do that.
So how to separate my personal life from like the therapy life?
Like, is obviously your life and experiences informs your work, and like that makes you able to connect with people. But then, like, where do you draw the line for like, okay, my life is separate from yours, and like maybe this part isn't relevant?
Yeah, I'm laughing because that's a challenge I think every therapist has, and it's a very thin line, and you have to really use your discretion depending on who you're working with and the relationship that you have with the client. I'm sure you're probably familiar with it, but it's in the therapy world, it's called countertransference, and it's basically when a therapist allows their experiences or their feelings to leak into their work with a client, usually triggered or inspired or influenced by the client's experiences. But how I keep my boundaries with that. So when I'm working, like I wear different hats, right? So when I'm working, I put on the therapist hat. So I usually am pretty good at like I'm locked into the professional mode. Mm-hmm. When I'm in that space, I compartmentalize a lot. And so when I hear a client share something that a part of me is like, I relate to that, or I had an experience that is aligned with that, or I want to speak to that. I have like as they're speaking, and even as I'm speaking, I still have like this internal dialogue going where those different parts of me, or those different compartments, are measuring what to share and how to share it. And that's like a constant mental process. And so that helps me to maintain certain boundaries. But a general rule that I follow is it's also what I learned in teaching. How is what I'm about to share going to help or influence the person I'm speaking to? So like, even as a teacher, a lot of my students' experiences I could relate to, but I was also cognizant of the fact that if I share that, let's say if you have a kid who smokes weed a lot, if I share that, like, yeah, I used to smoke weed a lot, or this was a challenge or an experience that I had, that could inspire them or could help them in navigating their situation, or, telling a kid, hey, I used to smoke weed, but now I don't, and this is how I navigated out of it. That could be an inspiration. It might lead to positive steps taken after that. Or it may just reinforce their behavior, because they may say, okay, well, you're in your 30s, I'm 16, so clearly you seem all right, so I'm going to continue doing what I do. So it's more so thinking about the influence and how that's going to affect that person. But generally, I try to only share what I think would be helpful. But my job is mostly to listen and guide folks in finding their own answers. So I try to like stay clear of that as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to hear kind of a behind the scenes of like, here's what your therapist is, when they're working, this is what they're working through.
It's a lot of mental processes.
Yeah, and you're kind of feeling an emotion or experience well up, recognize it's related, but then not just immediately blurt it out. It's you're kind of calculating what pieces of this can I share? Should I mute it? Should I raise the volume on this?
Right.
Press more, redirect.
100%.
So I think the behind the scenes look is really cool. Like if you're speaking with your therapist, a lot of times it's just at that level of like client therapist,
right? And
you're thinking about your own stuff. But I think it'd be helpful to also hear like the kind of humanizing the therapist, like they're a person working. It's kind of meta. It's like the next level up of like, while you guys are working on this, your therapist is thinking about this, working on this, and it's kind of like breaks the fourth wall a little bit. But I guess I'm thinking about this with like, I haven't had this conversation with my therapist. Like, I don't know what she's thinking about when we're talking about my life. So I think it's really helpful to like, that's a cool angle to dive into.
Definitely. I think people often forget that their therapists are also people and have real struggles. And, you know, I think when you take certain roles, whether you're a therapist or like a teacher, any kind of like role that involves some level of leadership, people always assume that, especially if you're poised, that you just have all the answers and you have it all together. And that's like far from the case in a lot of situations. So again, as a teacher, I learned that as well. Like I've worked with teachers who dealt with like some real like addictions and like some really deep struggles outside of their jobs, but every day they would show up with a smile and, you know, do their jobs well. And so I think with therapists, it's important I do think there's a degree of you should practice what you preach in therapy just because, you know, you're guiding folks in their lives, but also it's understanding, man, we're human beings too, you know, and there's I think for even, I don't want to say the better, but for quote unquote good therapists or effective therapists, I do think that you should have a degree of like life experience to be able to speak to someone else's experience. It's hard to do that if you only have the book knowledge. So generally, I think that like, you know, if you have a therapist who's like just really good, just probably you can assume that they've been through some things as well. Or they might still be going through it, and that's why they can speak to it so well.
Two things I want to touch upon after hearing that is I want to hear if there's something you wish everyone understood about the role of therapists. Like if there was one like misunderstanding you could clear up, and then I want to get into like client therapist matching and like how shared experiences can help reinforce that relationship. But let's start with the first one. Like, is there a common misunderstanding about therapy, mental health you wish you could clear up that people would just understand?
That's good. If there was a common misunderstanding about therapy that I wish people would understand is,
or about like therapists, like one of them could be like, we're human, like, and not this like perfect rendering of like an ideal therapist in this position. That could be an example.
Yeah, that's good. I would stick with that. I would say that therapists are not these all-knowing figures that just have all the answers and live these perfect lives. Therapists are mainly guides. That's how I think of my role. Like I'm far from perfect, and I don't have this all-knowing wisdom or knowledge, but I can assist you in finding the solutions or the answers that you're looking for. And sometimes we may not have the answers, or we may not be able to find them, but therapists are just really here to support folks in reaching their goals and more so like their personal development. But also we're here to help just navigate, you know, those internal challenges that other folks may not be as equipped to help with. But it's okay to have a bad therapist. There's a lot of therapists out there. So if you do have like, even for myself, if I feel like a client is not the best match, or, you know, I may not be able to help them in the way that they're looking for, I have no problem saying that. So that's also why I make an effort to connect with other therapists and have them in my network, so that I can refer out. So yeah, we're people with our limitations as well. And who knows, you might go to a club one night and see your therapist getting like wasted. But they're people with lives. This is like their 9 to 5, but outside of that, they live real lives too.
Yeah. And in the matchings, like making sure that the client therapist match is one you think can be effective and productive. This kind of harkens back to what you kind of inspired you to pursue this career. You didn't see representation, Black male therapists. How does shared experiences background contribute to a stronger working relationship between client and therapist?
It's major. Back to the point of, I believe the more life experience that a therapist has, the more effective I assume they would be, because you would know certain struggles and experiences on a more intimate level. I believe that relates to the representation part as well, to an extent. So I'm not going to be the best match for every Black male because I'm a Black male therapist, and vice versa. I'm not going to, if I'm looking for a therapist, you know, I'm not just going to work with someone just because they look like me. So I think you still have to vet who you're working with, but having that lived experiences, having the lived experiences definitely helps with the approach to helping folks. And even my work with teenagers and high school students, there's an added leverage of having lived and experienced a lot of the experiences that they're having, and having the benefit of time and maturity to be able to, where I'm not too distant from them, right? So I often see the disconnect between high schoolers or teenagers and like older generations, because even though they might have had very similar experiences, a kid is going to assume, oh, you're older, it was different in your time, right? But if they're working with someone who is maybe a generation or so older, then there's more of a relatability in that relationship. And so I think just considering those different factors, like this representation, again, lived experiences, age is a factor as well. Actually, in my experience, when I was trying out therapy years ago, the first therapist that I connected with after college, the first one I connected with was a Black female therapist who was significantly older than me at the time. And while her insights were helpful, I didn't stick with her because I didn't feel the relatability. Because I'm like, you know, the gender difference, but also the age difference. And my next therapist after that, he was a few years older than me, looked like me, similar lived experiences. I worked with him for a while, but then I got to a place where I wanted a higher level of insight and wisdom. And I felt like he was almost a peer to me because we were similar in age. And the therapist after that, he was older Black male, not significantly older. Maybe he's about, I want to say how old is he? Probably like 15 to 20 years older. Mm-hmm. And so I actually stuck with him, I think, the longest, because there's a lived experience as the representation, but then there's also the wisdom that comes with age, but not to the level of disconnect. So I think it depends on what you're looking for in the season that clients are in as well.
Yeah, no, it's helpful to hear, because I think some people, if you don't find a match with your therapist, you scrap therapy. Oh, yeah. Therapy's not for me. So it's helpful to hear someone who knows therapy deeply, is a therapist, understands on a personal level, like working with different therapists at different parts of your life, depending on what you need, is not a failure of therapy. It's just
100%
because of what we're talking about, that each therapist is a human, has their own lived experiences,
right,
will inform how your sessions go, and in different parts of your life that may change. So it's a call to action to find a therapist that works for you, feels good, feels productive,
right,
that you're making progress on the things you want to make progress on, or feel how you want to feel aspirationally, without throwing out therapy entirely.
100%.
So I think that's helpful to hear your experience, like continuing the search and checking in with yourself, like, how is this going? And not just kind of sticking with the same person just because it's familiar, but
exactly.
Challenging, like, I actually want more here.
Right. And again, back to, what you're looking for, because at different stages, I was looking for whether it's like relationship support or support with navigating my career or just like own personal development. So it's important to do research on therapists like specialties as well, because someone who is more in the relationship realm, obviously they're more equipped to help with that. But they may not be as equipped to support with career challenges or maybe even deeper mental health challenges if there's like, depression or anxiety or what have you. So I think looking at therapist specialties as well, there's a lot that goes into it, but paying attention to all these different elements, I think, can help to find the best match.
Mm-hmm. And I want to touch on, because in large part, this podcast covers the intersection of masculinity, mental health. So I'm curious how that affects the way that guys approach therapy, either in terms of like access and barriers, and then how you make progress, like connecting with guys, accountability. How do you feel in your experience that it can influence therapy work, in terms of like accessing it, using it, making progress? What are the barriers? How does it help? How does it hurt?
So just to clarify, how do I support clients, specifically men, in like accountability and
accountability? Like, what are if there are common challenges or barriers, either accessing therapy for men, or I don't know, accessing emotions or making progress? Like, are there trends you see with male clients?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to mental health education, which is also part of the work that I do. So as you mentioned earlier, I do consulting. And so I speak with schools, corporations, nonprofits, and like healthcare organizations about how they can make mental health education and resources more accessible. And so a lot of folks do lack knowledge about what resources are available and how they can access them. So, for example, a lot of people don't know that therapy can be accessed through their insurance. And so if you have a therapist that you want to work with who maybe their rate is $150 or $200 and you may not have that, your insurance could possibly cover most, if in some cases, maybe all of it. But a lot of folks just think their health insurance is just for their physical health. And so that's one barrier, right? Because if you think it's not affordable, then you're not going to really take the time to look into the resources. One of the benefits of the times we're in and social media is having way more access to mental health education and knowledge. So, of course, there's social media. There's, different search engines. Obviously, we have like ChatGPT and like AI now that can help folks identify resources a lot quicker. So I think that's a great benefit. Those are great resources to use, just whatever digital resources that folks have. But also leaning into communities. And I think for men, as we highlighted before, community is something that's usually missing, and something that we have to like remind ourselves of to connect with. But generally, in most workplaces or schools or even just like community-based organizations, there are mental health resources or tools available. So, for example, even in the workplace, most corporate spaces that I've seen, there are like employee resource groups, or what is it, like employee assistant programs that usually offer some kind of mental health service to their employees. A lot of folks, from what I've seen, don't really take advantage or take the time to even learn what resources are available. That could be due to different reasons. I think one of the barriers could be most folks in the corporate space are there to, they're focused on their performance and just essentially doing their job and going home. But your job may actually have resources that could lead you to, whether it's the right therapist or even like yoga or certain gyms that may have wellness offerings. So yeah, I would say wherever it's broad. My response is broad because I think from what I've seen, that obviously men's experiences are very varied and lines of work are very varied. But I would just say wherever you are, there usually are resources within reach. Just use your digital resources or tools. And if you're working, use the tools that may be available at work, or speak to, whoever your manager is or you're comfortable with at work, HR, speak to them about tools that may be available.
Yeah, it's a good push. I agree with you. I think with the right intention and effort, the tools are in reach, accessible, especially in the digital age. There's very low risk, low friction resources online, and I think one of the trends that indicates that the digital tools can be useful is people just even pinging ChatGPT as like a, hey, what do you think about this? Both in terms of search for mental health resources, and then I think even newer is a trend of people asking ChatGPT as a therapist itself. And I'm not condoning or endorsing that, just recognizing that as a trend, because it's this impersonal, anonymous. Like if you're just beginning to feel out like, hey, I feel this, like what does that really mean? Right. So it's a new space. I don't know how it's going to evolve, but I think it's indicative of like,
it's very important.
Everyone wants someone to talk to and listen to. And if you don't have that, or you feel certain barriers, then those online anonymous like messaging is there as like it could be like the very first step into exploring the mental health resources.
Yeah, 100%. I like that. I like that you expanded on that idea, because that's something that I'm working on as well. In my consulting work, specifically more so in the school space, because there's a lot of liability that comes with that as well. Yeah. And there have already been a few cases of folks taking their own lives and confiding in ChatGPT and AI platforms significantly, and the AI platforms not responding in ethical ways, if you will, to support these folks who are struggling. And so that becomes the ethical question of can technology apply the level of ethics needed for effective mental health support. Is it possible? I believe so. Is it dangerous for folks to lean too heavily into technology for their mental health? Absolutely. And so the work that I'm doing and the programs that I'm developing are teaching folks how, because I think it's inevitable for us to use these tools for our mental health at some point in time. How deep you go depends on the person, obviously, but what I'm working on is in offering folks is education on how to use these tools in ways that are healthier and safe. And a lot of that has to do with prompting as well, right? Like, how are you speaking to chat? And it's still a developing space. Like, I think not even just for myself, I think in general, I think we're still trying to find how to approach it in the most effective ways. But there are tools that can be used. We just have to be very mindful about how we use them. And outside of ChatGPT, I mean, there are journaling apps. You know, obviously there are meditation apps. Even on YouTube, there are like guided meditations and journaling prompts as well. So it doesn't always have to be a specific like AI platform that's being used. But yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, and I think the youngest generation growing up with access to these tools that are completely normal to them. Yeah. I think for us, like, we've seen it come about and become consumable.
100%.
And it's new.
Yeah.
But for the youngest generation, it's now completely going to be normal to expect a response when you type something in like a conversational language or even voice it out loud.
Right.
And that won't feel as alien as it does for our generation. So
it's dangerous, man.
It's dangerous, but also an opportunity, right?
It is, yeah.
Like, I know that in many of the hospital systems, there's months-long waits to access a therapist. So what do you do with this population that is waiting to physically meet with a therapist, but is waiting? They could have things urgently going on in their lives that they need someone to talk about. And if an AI tool can step in as like a Band-Aid to hold someone over until they can meet a therapist, that's an opportunity. But like you said, right now it's very new and comes with all sorts of risks because you don't have perfect fidelity over the responses AI can give. And so if you put vulnerable people in that position that rely on a tool like AI overly confidently, then you can have poor health outcomes, which is, So it's I think thinking about it, talking about it, the ethics, the guardrails around it are going to be super important because it is inevitable. People are curious. Young people it's completely normal. Right. And humans are going to ask it things that are on their mind.
Yeah.
So it's critical next step in the field of mental health.
Yeah, it's also as you said that too, I also wanted to highlight a tool that could be useful to young people as well, because you're absolutely right. The wait times can take very long, and for someone who needs the help immediately, or even if it's not an emergency, if they just need the help soon, then that can be a challenge to wait. And that can, like you said, lead into them leaning more into or relying more on digital tools. But an organization that I've partnered with is Marble Health. So they're a telehealth platform that's specifically designed for kids. And the owner, or the founder, he's one of the founders of the Headway platform. And he was a former teacher. And so he has, the experience in like the mental health world, the educational world. And basically how it operates is when students when they're in school and they go to like their school social worker or guidance counselor or mental health counselor, if their counselor notices that they need more support, then they refer them to Marble Health. And Marble Health, they onboard students within a week. And so like literally as soon as you send the referral, they contact the parents. They like nearly harass them to like call, text, like every day until the parents respond. And they take most insurances. So students young people usually get onboarded pretty quickly. And they have like group therapy, individual therapy, family therapy. So that's a tool that young people can use to get like quick help.
Yeah, I think having specialized focus on different populations, like we are the resources for young people, is really cool because, like we talked about earlier, the shared experiences or specialized knowledge in therapy can be really helpful because a kid in high school's experience is so different from a working adult in the corporate world. So the way that you engage with mental health resources is going to be completely different.
Yeah, definitely. And there are a lot of structural changes that need to be made as well. There's a lot that can be said about school systems and the school day and how it's structured. Obviously, COVID and all the time we spent indoors conditioned not only us, but especially young folks. They missed out on a significant part of their social development and conditioning. So there are a lot of structural factors that contribute to the conditions that we see today. I think with our generation, we've had the benefit of, for the most part, at least like growing up outside, essentially being able to connect with our friends, no matter how socially awkward or uncomfortable you might have been. That experience of just having to be around people, even if you didn't interact much, but just having to be around folks and be present for the most part, I think benefited us more in the long term. When I was growing up, like we had Game Boy. That was probably the most that we had as far as like digital devices to carry with us. But for a generation that's raised with tablets and iPads and phones from, 2-3 years old, there's a different, their neurochemistry is designed very differently. And technology is figuratively and even literally a part of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's designed to connect. Like in theory, we should be able to stay connected more closely.
Yeah.
But I think the incentives of technology producers and consumers are misaligned, in that I saw the statistic that 7% of content on Instagram is your friends now. Yeah. So the technology that was supposed to connect us is now more of a distraction technique.
Right.
And I find myself in this pattern sometimes where if faced with a anxious or stressful thing on my mind, scrolling immediately turns down the volume.
Yeah.
Just it's a crutch to not have to think about it. And so I catch myself in that pattern all the time.
Same.
But it's so easy and it's so fast that it can build into a habit that you slip into really quickly. That's reinforced really strongly.
100%. I think that's the downside of convenience. Is the more, well, I think with anything, even beyond technology, the more things become convenient, the more we rely on them, and essentially I'm not going to say we disable ourselves. That might be too strong of a word, but I think we weaken our abilities in those areas. And so in the technology example you gave, even something like exercise, it's like the more convenient an exercise is, the less effective it's going to be for your physical development. But I think as a culture, I think we rely on convenience a lot, and that also takes away from our ability to perform, whether physically, mentally, socially, intellectually.
Yep. I also think this is expanding even further, that culturally the pursuit of like hedonistic happiness and pleasure is rewarded more so than like the type 2 fun, like hard work building mode, where like most of the things in life that are good for us require things that don't feel good.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
Being a good father is really hard. Yeah. And not hedonistic, like easy pleasure, or like doing well at work, the same thing. Being a good friend often involves things that suck, like helping someone move or picking them up from the airport, or talking to them when they're really down. Like it's not fun, but it's what you invest in to be a good friend, and then you get the sustainable reward later on. So I have to remind myself of that all the time, that like most of the things that are good may not feel good.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think, you know, it's a culture of instant gratification for sure. And I'm 100% there with you. I think it's a harder, in regards to young people, I think it's more of a challenge to instill it within them, because again, their whole lives have been shaped around convenience and instant gratification for the most part. So even from a parenting perspective, like even with my son, it's I have to be mindful about how much I give to him in certain moments, or how much I yield to something that he wants. You know, so 2-year-old is going to want everything immediately, but even instilling patience and finding ways to make him wait or make him earn what he wants, so that we can challenge that again, like you said, like the hedonistic happiness and that addiction to instant gratification.
Yeah, and but it's all at the same time, it's also a balance, right?
Yeah,
like
100%.
Being soft with kids, giving them grace, allowing them to fully relax is also so important.
Yeah.
So I think like the David Goggins be hard all the time is not healthy.
I agree.
And I think Mr. Goggins should come on to Under the Hood talk and talk about his feelings.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. It's like you said, man, it's a balance. And knowing, having the discretion to know when to turn which switch on is important.
Yeah. Rewarding both, like having purpose, working hard in various aspects, investing in the things that are uncomfortable, but then also making sure that you have time and space to decompress, relax, turn off your brain. And if being able to access the soft skills of like emotionally connecting with a friend or offering a hug, like those are just as important as like working overtime or going to the gym an extra half hour a week. Like if both of those aren't rewarded, you're stunting yourself and your development.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, we're coming up on time, so I want to open the floor, see if there's anything else that we didn't cover that you want to share, or like ways that people can connect with you or find your work or follow along.
Sure. Yeah, no, I enjoyed the conversation. I don't think there's anything that is top of mind that I would add. As far as where folks can connect with me, Hueman Fathers is the platform that I'm pushing the most right now. So it's Hueman Fathers. The Hueman Gallery is like my umbrella. So huemangallery.com. Instagram, same thing. And then my personal Instagram is Jean the Hueman, Jean the Hueman, again spelled Hueman. If you're reaching out in regards to like therapy or counseling or life coaching, I'm on Psychology Today, so you can always check there. Or if you're just looking for a therapist in general, it's a good resource to use. And Hueman Gallery as well. I have life coaching options on the site too.
Cool. Well, I so appreciate you sharing your experiences, both personal, your work as a therapist. I think the inside look, it was a really cool angle for for me to listen to. I know I learned a ton. And weaving in anecdotes from your life and as a teacher, and you have such a strong window into how young people are feeling and what they're seeking, and then sharing insights from your work as a therapist. So I so appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
I'm happy that you're out there supporting the people,
Thank you.
thinking hard about this, and then sharing it with us and the wide open internet for all to hear.
Yeah, thank you, man. I love the platform too and the work that you're doing. I think it's necessary, not only for men. I think just for everyone to tap in and listen to, even if can't relate to certain conversations. Just it widens the perspective for sure. So I'm learning a lot as well, and yeah, just keep it going.